Lost and alone, the dead wander the frozen world, looking for redemption or death and destruction. When the dead wander the places where winter never stops, they almost always are searching for something. From mystical beings in Alaska who can either help you during the long winter months of scarcity and bleak darkness, or drag you to the underground depths, to spirits who roam the snow-blasted peaks, searching for absolution, and mysterious messages from the depths of lonely, frozen worlds. These are three of the most chilling ghost stories from the tundra, guaranteed to send a shiver down your spine from more than just the cold. In a small village in Alaska, the residents were preparing. Every year, when the seasons started to change, and the wind whistled down from the frozen tundra in the north, threatening to bring with it the thick snow of winter, a tribe of people would come and trade. The people of the village gathered their goods, took stock of supplies, and most importantly, locked their dogs away, because when the traders came, the dogs would rage and snarl, fighting to get out, to attack the visitors, because they knew that these were no ordinary traders, that they were surrounded by a mystery that could be kind or malevolent. The Little People of Alaska is a tale of folklore that goes back centuries, with each region having different tales and experiences, some of them terrifying. The Little People are indigenous to Alaska, likened to fairies or elves in other folklore. Some of them are helpful, guiding lost travellers to safety or bringing supplies, and others are evil, leading people into the snowy landscape to be lost, or kidnapping them to live underground in captivity, to be enslaved or eaten. In this particular village, the residents waited with both excitement and fear for the arrival of the Little People. They could get stores for the winter, fine furs from caribou if the visit was to go well. They appeared silently at dusk. The first sign was the howl from the dogs, followed by snarling and the rattle of the doors they fought to be released. Just as the villagers were leaving their houses to meet the traders, one dog managed to squeeze through the gap in his door, rushing at one of the Little People and killing him within seconds. They stood frozen to the spot for a fraction of time, before vanishing as quickly as they had arrived, the tiny body of the slain disappearing with them. The village never saw the Little People again, and ever since then, the village declined rapidly. Crops would fail in summer, animals became ill and died, people left. The village never recovered, and one of the elder indigenous residents claimed it was all due to that fateful day, the last day they had the visit from the Little People. One Reddit user tells another story of his encounter with the Little People. He was on a moose hunting trip with his daughter when they decided to take a break to chop some firewood for the cold night ahead. They had been following a large bull moose that they knew was in the area but had so far proved to be elusive. As he started to split the logs, the repetitive rhythm gaining momentum, stacking each split log in a neat pile beside him, he felt the sense of being watched. He grew uneasy, glancing at the edge of the woods, bears and wolves on his mind, when he caught a glimpse of a small figure poking its head around the edge of a tree. He had lived in Alaska all his life. He had heard the stories of the Little People, and he knew what this creature was. Slowly and deliberately, he carried on with his work, keeping the small figure in his peripheral vision, but not daring to make eye contact or any noise, other than the repetitive rhythm of his axe on wood. As he worked, he saw more and more of them appear from the woods, standing silently, watching. For 40 minutes they all quietly stayed with him, showing no sign of making contact or malevolence, until one by one they melted back into the darkness of the woods. Just as they had disappeared, the man heard the flapping and squawking of many tundra swans just through the trees to the other side in a small clearing. Thinking the swans were fighting off a bear or wolf, he took his gun and went to investigate. What he saw baffled him. There were no swans, none flying overhead and no noise of any escaping, but right in front of him was the huge bull moose he and his daughter had been hunting. His peaceful encounter with the little people, he believes, was a kind and helpful visit to drive the moose toward them. In the northernmost valley of Labrador in Canada, a hunter stood after checking the last of his traps and stretched his back, looking skyward. His brow furrowed as he saw the dark clouds heading his way from the north, blurred white underneath. He knew there was a snowstorm coming, and he knew he had to get home fast. As the wind howled, he drew his fur hat closer around his face and started heading back down to his village. He hadn't made it very far before the first flakes started to fall, and it wasn't long before he was in complete whiteout. He had been in snowstorms before, but this was nothing like he had ever experienced. The thick cloud and swirling flakes had made the light disappear, and he couldn't see a foot in front of him. He soon started to panic. He walked faster, but soon started to feel he was walking in circles. The cold started to seep down his neck, a shiver coming from deep within him. His legs were growing tired and his eyes could no longer focus when his foot caught something beneath the thick snow, and he fell to the ground. As he swam in and out of consciousness, the last thing he saw was a glow of light. A dark figure on a sled drew up beside him, drawn by 8 snow-white huskies. He came to in a warm room, a fire blazing nearby in a stone hearth. A man in an apron looked shocked behind the bar, rushing round to greet him, and the strange rescuer who had brought him in. As the innkeeper started to speak, the dark figure, covered completely in furs, told him to take care of the fallen man before he disappeared in front of their eyes. The startled innkeeper gasped to the lost man that it must have been the Phantom Trapper. The Phantom Trapper is a legend in Canada, a man that once drove from village to village in Labrador. He would sell furs, trade with the locals, and some said he even sold his own brewed spirit that was close to poison. He would start fights in the local tavern and beat women he tried to romance. One day he arrived at a remote town where he tried to seduce the innkeeper's wife and was met with a shotgun straight to his belly. Legend says that he was refused entry to heaven because of his wicked ways, and was doomed to roam the frozen landscape, helping those in need to repent and hopefully finally earn his eternal peace. Many eyewitness accounts have reported the Phantom Trapper leading other sleds to a nearby village or carrying them into their houses before disappearing, a ghostly vision on the frozen mountains, waiting for redemption. In the winter of 1971 at Byrd Station in Antarctica, a man sat down to begin his shift as a communications operator. He pulled his jumper up around his neck and chin as the wind outside screamed at gale force, lifting the snow into an endless wall of white. Even though he was expecting a long and boring night, he was at least grateful that he did not have to go outside. Many of the other stations in the region closed down over winter, so he assumed his shift would be quiet. He did not know how wrong he would be. A message began to appear on the radio, coming in from several stations, all saying the same thing, to redirect the transmissions to McMurdo. When the operator listened more closely, he could do nothing but freeze in shock. The message was coming from someone who, 6 years earlier, had wandered out into the frozen Antarctic wilderness and was never seen again. His name was Carl Disch. Carl Disch was a young and promising scientist from Wisconsin in the United States, spending the winter conducting research at Byrd Station in Antarctica. His work took place in the radio noise building, and unfortunately, it required him to travel back and forth to the main station several times a day for food and living quarters. Between the two buildings, the landscape was bleak and utterly desolate. When the wind howled and the darkness of winter settled in, a person could be lost in a matter of seconds. To prevent this, a hand guide had been installed between the buildings, allowing workers to follow it safely through the snow in their heavy outdoor gear. One terrible morning, as the storm raged outside, Carl set off to make the 2.1-kilometre journey from the radio noise building to the main complex. He never arrived. By 10 o'clock, when his co-workers realised Carl had not appeared, the alarm was raised and a search was organised. A group went out into the driving, sideways wind and snow, carefully checking the hand guide. They followed Carl's footprints along the marked path until they saw them suddenly turn away, leading off into the bleak nowhere of the Antarctic tundra. The search was immediately expanded. Human chains of people stretched out as far as they could manage, scouring the snow for any sign of him, but conditions rapidly deteriorated. Temperatures plunged to minus 62 degrees Celsius, and the wind became so fierce it stripped the breath from the searchers' lungs. After several days with no contact and no trace of Carl, he was presumed dead from exposure to the deadly Antarctic winter. No remains were ever found. In the years following his disappearance, reports of strange occurrences began to surface. A blurred figure seen moving through snowstorms, a cry that seemed to mingle with the screaming wind, a dog that went missing from the station, believed to have been lured away into the cold. And then, 6 years later, the radio message was received. The terrified operator listened as the transmission claimed to be from Carl himself. The voice said that he had willingly left to be alone, and that he had survived all those years in isolation. He spoke of missing human company, of the howling wind driving him close to madness. He admitted to taking the dog from the station for companionship, only to lose even that last comfort to the frozen landscape. He seemed to gloat, even take pride, in being the loneliest man on the planet. The source of the transmission was never found. Carl Disch's body has never been recovered. Byrd Station was eventually abandoned, left to rot beneath the snow, the wind whistling through its empty corridors. But Carl could still be out there somewhere, yearning for companionship and revelling in loneliness in the most isolated place on Earth.